Antibiotics, they're just amazing, right? A total game changer for modern medicine. We kind of just assume they work and that's the end of it. But what if that's not the whole story? What if the effects stick around inside our bodies for way, way longer than we think?
So let's get personal for a second. I want you to really think about this. Remember that antibiotic you took, maybe for a sinus infection or something like 8 years ago? What did it actually do inside you? The answer? Well, it's probably not what you think.
Okay, so here's the key. Antibiotics are what we call powerful microbiome modulators. It's a fancy term, but what it means is they don't just go in and neatly take out the one bad guy bacteria making you sick. No, it's much more like setting off a wildfire in a forest. Sure, it gets rid of the problem, but it also burns down a massive chunk of the entire ecosystem. I'm talking about the trillions of tiny microbes that live in your gut.
And this is where it gets really interesting. The damage from that wildfire, it's not just a short-term thing. That disruption, that chaos it causes in your gut's ecosystem, it can literally last for years.
And I want to be super clear here. This isn't just about people who take antibiotics all the time. The science is pointing to something pretty startling. Even one single course can make a difference.
So how much of a difference are we talking? Well, brace yourself for this. The changes in your gut microbiome, the aftermath of that single round of antibiotics, can still be measured 4 to 8 years after you took the very last pill. Think about that. That is a massive, long-lasting footprint from a prescription that was probably only for a week. So what does that actually look like inside you? Well, even years later, the population levels of about 10 to 15% of the different types of microbes in your gut can still be out of whack. The whole balance of that inner world has been shifted, and it's a lasting change. But, not all wildfires are created equal. Some are small and controlled, others are raging infernos. And it turns out the same is true for antibiotics. The specific drug you take makes a huge difference in how much long-term impact it has. Let's take a look. On one side, you've got the heavy hitters, drugs like clindamycin and fluoroquinolones. These guys leave a really strong, lasting mark. But on the other side, you have drugs like penicillin V or nitrofurantoin, which cause way less long-term disruption. This is such a critical thing to understand. Okay, so we've established that these changes happen and they can last for a long, long time. But that leads to the million-dollar question, right? Why should we even care if our microbiome gets a little disrupted? I mean, it's a fair point. So what if some of your gut bacteria changed? Why is that such a big deal? Well, it's a huge deal because that inner world, that ecosystem in your gut, is deeply connected to your overall health. When you alter it with antibiotics, you can mess with everything from how you process food to how your immune system works. And that's why researchers have started linking these long-term gut changes to an increased risk for some really serious stuff. We're talking about obesity, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, even autoimmune conditions, and certain cancers. So yeah, the stakes are pretty high. Okay, I know that all sounds a little scary, but here's the good news. There's actually a really clear, proactive way forward, and it's all about protecting that inner ecosystem. The concept is called antibiotic stewardship. Antibiotic stewardship sounds complicated, but it's actually a really simple and powerful idea. It just means being smarter and more careful about how we use these drugs. Now, this is not about saying never use antibiotics. Of course not. They save lives. It's about using them more wisely to get the best results for ourselves, to make sure they keep working for everyone, and crucially, to protect our own microbiome. So how do you actually do this? It boils down to 3 really simple but powerful steps. First, talk to your doctor and make sure you're avoiding antibiotics when they're not needed. Like for a cold, which is a virus, right? They won't help. Second, if you do need one, ask if a narrow-spectrum drug is an option. Remember those? The ones with the smaller footprint? And third, and this is the most important part, just have an informed conversation with your doctor. You have to be your own advocate here. And if there's one thing to really let sink in, it's this quote from the research. The recovery of your gut microbiome after antibiotics is often slow and it's often incomplete. Let's go back to that forest analogy. The trees might grow back after the fire, but that forest might never be exactly the same as it was before.
So that leaves us with a final thought, a question to take with you. The next time you're at the doctor's office and an antibiotics is on the table, what questions are you going to ask? What will you do to be a good steward of your own health and to protect the power of these amazing medicines for the future?